It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc. In an era of chaos, confusion, and craziness, Ferenc is a voice for common sense. As a financial literacy educator, speaker, and entrepreneur, Ferenc cuts through the noise to help us understand how current events affect our money, economy, and our freedom. Now, here's Ferenc.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferenc. If you want to contact me, go to yourpersonalbank.com, and yes, you will reach me. I will get back with you. I had an interesting experience recently. I was able to visit Andrew Jackson's home, the Hermitage. If you're a history buff at all, put this on your bucket list. It is one of the most authentic mansions, presidential mansions, or any other for that matter, that you will get to visit. Nearly everything in the mansion, including the furnishings and all of that, are original. It's truly amazing. In fact, in Andrew Jackson's office, for example, he liked to collect newspapers and had them bound into big books. And those newspapers were still sitting there. It was really quite an amazing experience to walk the halls and the grounds of where Andrew Jackson stood and many other famous people of his day. It truly was a step back in time. Also, his plantation of over 1,100 acres is still there intact and still, it's a museum. It looks like it did in his time for the most part. So highly recommend it. And it's outside of Nashville, just so you know. Great place. I've got a lot of stuff to cover today, so let's just jump into it. First of all, wages in the United States are falling at a striking pace, according to Indeed. They're stating that the U.S. wage growth has slowed sharply over the past year and is getting close to returning to its pre-pandemic level. And in fact, the pace of deceleration, as they're stating, is striking. This points out to the fact that it's broad-based, as they pointed out, but is mostly in the lower wage sectors. Now, this is not a surprise because, as we stated in last week's show, in the last 8 months, the U.S. has lost 2 million full-time jobs. Part-time jobs are up. That's why they tout the unemployment numbers as being good. The government does. But the reality is the full-time jobs have been declining and are declining at an accelerating pace over the past 8 months. This is not good economic news. Also, as I stated, it's primarily happening in more of the lower sector jobs, which is no surprise when you have more people vying for those jobs, which I'll share in a minute about that. On top of that, to add insult to injury, for example, on groceries and dining out are both up 25% in the last, since 2020. This is according to the Labor Department. The other piece of economic news that's squeezing the average American is just 4 years ago, the income required to purchase the average home in America, according to Zillow, was $59,000. Just 4 years later, that same home, the average income, or the income needed for the average home, that is $109,000. In other words, the income required to purchase the same home 4 years later has increased $40,000 a year, almost a 40% increase. Now, how many of you have received a roughly 40% increase in income in the past 4 years? Obviously, the answer most people is no. Of course, in big cities, the averages are higher. The sad part of this is homeownership has slipped away from many Americans, particularly younger Americans and lower income Americans. And this is due to several factors, but of course has to do a lot with inflation. We're going to discuss a lot about that today because the inflation numbers recently also came out hotter than expected. Now, maybe hotter than expected what the government expected, but frankly, no surprise to me. And if you've been listening to the show for any period of time, you know that. But we're going to add insult to injury to all of this, and then we're going to discuss some solutions. Tyson's Foods recently is doing a major disservice to residents in Iowa. Apparently, they want to lay off 1,200 people, which is something like the 15% of the working population of an entire town, and they're going to unemploy them and replace them with illegal immigrants. They want to clear them to work and pay them $16.50 an hour and give them benefits. Obviously, that is probably less than what they're paying the American citizens, but this is part of the whole process of understanding why open borders are in favor of so many people. Big business likes this because they can lower the cost of labor, and the numbers are starting to bear that out. In fact, it gets worse than that. Another news article here came out recently sharing that 28 major companies are quietly gearing up to hire and support the massive influx of illegal aliens. Companies like Amazon, Tyson, as I stated earlier, Pfizer, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Airbnb, among others, are all lining up to hire illegal aliens. And the reason is quite simple. They want cheap labor. A number of folks are getting really upset about this, and rightly so. In fact, the migrant crisis alone, as they call it, the illegal aliens, are costing New York City taxpayers $10 million every single day. High inflation, you have open borders, wages are starting to go down, wage growth is certainly decelerating, we're getting lost full-time jobs, and then you have companies like Tyson and others that are coming out and stating they want to hire these illegal aliens, of course, because they can pay them less. It's cheap labor for them. But to make matters even worse, to add insult to injury, recently, federal judge Sharon Johnson Coleman has determined that illegals have the right to bear arms. You can't make this up. She actually wants to strip citizens of their Second Amendment rights and give them to illegals. She stated in her ruling that the federal law barring illegal immigrants from possessing guns violated the Second Amendment. I've got a news flash for you. The Constitution and the Second Amendment do not apply to non-citizens. But that's the ruling that this federal judge put out there. It's amazing. It's shocking. There's a TikToker who's gone viral who's explaining how illegal immigrants can take advantage of squatting laws. This Venezuelan man, he's going through the whole process. As he stated, he says, "Have you thought about invading a house in the United States?" And he says, "I found out there's a law that says if a house is not inhabited, we can seize it." These are not migrants. These are people that are invading the country, breaking our laws. They break the law when they step foot in the country because they're entering it illegally. What would stop them from then entering someone's home? What if it was your home? What if it was a home you wanted to purchase or you inherited or you were going to rent out and you have one of these illegal squatters, illegal alien squatters come in, and now you have a problem on your hands getting rid of them. Depending on the laws in your state, it can be anywhere from fairly easy to extremely difficult to remove one of these people. There's a number of cases that we're seeing online and stories that are happening of people having squatters and having major difficulty getting them out of their house legally. And the amount of money that these cities and governments are spending on those illegal immigrants is mind-boggling. For example, New York City spent $1.45 billion in 2023 on costs and expects a combined over $9 billion housing migrants in 2024 and 25. This is according to Bloomberg. Where does all that money come from, by the way? Taxpayers. And if they don't have enough for that, they'll just print more, which creates more inflation. Of course, means we all pay more. These are the things that are going on currently with our government that are affecting our money, affecting our lifestyle, affecting our society even. These are things that need to be stopped and stopped as soon as possible. The people that are in charge of these governments that are supporting and in many cases encouraging, both financially and otherwise, illegal immigration need to be replaced as soon as possible. We as citizens, if we want to retain our freedoms, retain our way of life, retain our society even, and our money, we need to rise up. We need to make our voices heard. We need to put them on notice that they need to change their policies or they will be replaced. That is the bottom line. That is what we have to do as citizens. We can no longer just stand by and hope somebody else does it, because this is going to affect literally everyone as this continues to go along. More and more and more of this illegal immigration will affect us financially. That's the part I just don't understand. I know many people who are wealthy who just don't want to get involved, or I really don't understand these people that are even encouraging much of this. Even a dog doesn't go to the bathroom in its own bed. And what I mean by that is you don't destroy the place that you live in to benefit you, because you still have to live in that area. And I know some of them think they'll be in their gated communities and they'll be protected from all of this, but eventually this will spill over and will affect them too. I'm going to share some things coming up in the next segments that will help you understand how much of this illegal immigration, this DEI stuff, all these things that are happening reduce the quality of our society, that it will come to literally affect each and every one of us, regardless of your economic situation or position in life. It will come and affect you. I just hope we wake up in time enough to stop it and turn this around. In the meantime, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com if you want to reduce your risk. My gosh, if there's any time where we're getting into a uncertain period of time economically, I think we're in it, or rapidly heading there. You want to reduce your income taxes too, your future tax liability. I can show you how to do that through your personal bank. This is so important. Again, as the government continues to spend more money, they're adding about $1 trillion every 100 days, folks. This is unsustainable. As they continue to add debt, the government will be under more and more pressure to raise revenues, to pay interest on the debt, if nothing else. They're going to be under pressure to raise taxes. If your money's in IRAs and 401ks or taxable type of accounts, there are ways that you can reduce your future tax liability. We can strategically diffuse the ticking tax time bomb, as it's often like to share. If you want to learn how to do these things and be strategic about your tax liability in the future, by all means, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. Stay tuned in the next segment. I got some more stuff you're not going to want to miss.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ferenc. For more information, contact Ferenc at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth. Want more information? Contact Ferenc at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ferenc Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferenc, and of course you can contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. I will respond to you. So one of the questions that I get all the time is, and why, and I struggle this with myself, is why would our leadership, why would some people, particularly the Democrats, we see, be so in favor of open borders? Big business, I shared earlier, they want cheap labor. Tyson and many other major corporations are already gearing up to hire illegal aliens, and the reason is quite simple: cheap labor. It makes sense if you understand and follow the money. But why are the Democrats, for example, so in favor, so against closing the border, for example? Well, here's, as I shared last week's show, and I want to get into it a little more depth. You need to understand this. There's a short and a long-term strategy involved here. The short-term strategy is the Census Department counts all people, not including illegal immigrants, not just citizens, but they count all people. Therefore, when you have a large immigrant illegal population, you can have more representatives in the House of Representatives. You also gain more electoral college votes. It's estimated, based on the 2020 numbers, that the Democrats have up to 20 additional seats currently in the U.S. House of Representatives, mostly from blue states, due to illegal immigrants being counted in the census. We all know that California, New York, Illinois lost a congressional district this past cycle. It would have been far worse, much worse, if they had not counted the illegals. Imagine what type of representation the Democrats will have in the future if they count all the illegals now that the Biden administration has allowed into the country. Remember, most of them are headed to these blue cities. And at first I didn't understand why, because these states vote overwhelmingly Democrat already. Why having more people there? What difference would it make? Until I realized illegals are counted for the census. This gives them more political power. Larger population gives you more representatives. So therefore, if indeed the numbers are correct that there are about 20 House seats that should not be there constitutionally, because no one can argue the fact that the founders or the Constitution thought that non-citizens should be counted and then applied for political power. That would have never been any consideration. That's so devious and underhanded. I think that's the reason why I didn't think of it sooner. You know, most people are pretty decent people. We live our lives and we don't try to figure out ways to grab more power all the time. But that's what Marxists do and leftists, and that's who we're dealing with here. We're not dealing with your dad's Democratic Party anymore. We're dealing with folks that are solely and completely focused on gaining and maintaining power. That's really what it boils down to. So understand, whether these illegals vote or not doesn't make any difference. They gain a lot more political power because of the additional seats in the House and the additional electoral college votes. Now let's put this in perspective. It's estimated, like I said, about 20 House seats currently are due to illegal immigrants being counted in the census. Most of those are from blue states. That's why the sanctuary cities. It isn't a magnet for illegal immigrants because they're offering them benefits, housing, food. We've discussed all these things before, which of course comes from taxpayer money. A lot of that comes from the federal government, which we're all helping support and pay for this, whether we like it or not. And if the federal government doesn't have the money to pay it, then they print more so that we all have inflation. So again, either way, we're all paying for this just so the Democrats can have outsized political power. If you think about this a minute, the last time a president won by more than a 5% margin, and why is that so important? Well, the Electoral College votes, it's estimated about 5% of those are due to illegal immigrants being counted in the census. So therefore, the Democrats are receiving about 5% overage in Electoral College votes and about 5% overage in the House of Representatives. Why is this so important? The last president to be voted in office with more than a 5% margin of winning was Reagan's second term. Therefore, you could conclude that every Democratic president over the last 20 years was voted in unconstitutionally. Every House of Representatives that's had less than a 5% majority has done so unconstitutionally. Think of the amount of political power involved that they have received due to the fact of just having illegal immigrants counted in the census and getting extra House seats and extra Electoral College votes. It's really mind-boggling when you think about all the policies and everything that's occurred over the last 10 or 20 years, for example, due to the fact the Democrats had more power than, frankly, they should have in those two areas. There are illegals in over a dozen cities in the United States already can vote, which does, again, tip illegal immigrants tend to vote heavily Democratic. So, in fact, about a dozen cities in this country have an overwhelming advantage towards Democrats, partly due to illegal immigration. San Francisco, for example, even let an illegal run for office, and they won locally. I wonder why. How many illegals actually voted for that person? When you put then this is the last piece to help you understand. Why are the Democrats in general so against voter ID? Well, if there's no requirements for any ID, How do you know whether the person is legal or illegal and are even allowed to vote? It makes it next to impossible to determine that. So how many illegal immigrants have been voting already and plan to vote in the future? There's another reason: more bodies for protests. Some of these illegals will protest and skew the perception of the public of how citizens feel about issues, and that makes an impact. And then there's the anchor babies. In other words, when illegals are in the country and then they have a child, that child becomes a U.S. citizen. And eventually, when they become of age, guess what? They will get to vote. And where do you think majority of them will vote for? The party that supports border security, or the one that allowed them in here through an open borders policy? Many of these people will be young and naive, and that could be millions of future votes. There's a lot of trade-offs, or benefits, I should say, for the Democrats to allow open borders, and is also the reason why they're so loath to deport anyone, even if they commit a crime, even a major crime. It's about votes, folks. It's about head count. It's about them being able to count so they can get more political power in the short term, and they're hoping for much more political power in the longer term. The solution is very simple. Anyone who's here illegally needs to be deported. That way, they cannot be counted by the census. In the Trump administration, there was an executive order issued by President Trump at the time, ordering the census to stop counting illegal aliens. Do you know what happened to that executive order? The census, U.S. Census Department, basically ignored it and counted them anyway. We cannot trust our government bureaucracies to even listen to a duly elected president if it goes against their agenda. The only way I see, the only solution I see to this unfair, unconstitutional political power that the Democrats have been enjoying now for probably the last decade or two, and are hoping to enjoy even further, is to deport these illegals. First of all, they are criminals because they broke the law. By definition, that makes you a criminal. They have no right to be here. They should be sent back. They should not be allowed to return for a period of time, should be at least a significant period of time, and they only would be able to come back if they do it through the proper legal process. That way we can vet who comes into this country and make this country a better place to live. This is better for all people. Anyone who lives in this country, rich, poor, or anywhere in between, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter what your background is. What kind of society do you really want to live in? If you have people here illegally, unvetted, you have no idea where they came from, what their agenda is, what their motivation is, why would you want to have that in your society? It is wrong on every level and needs to be stopped and reversed, and I hope and pray that is exactly what happens. If it doesn't happen in this next election, and we don't have the largest deportation program in the history of the United States, as Trump is stating he will do, I truly fear for what's going to happen in this country going forward. In the meantime, what do we do to protect ourselves? We got to reduce the market risk. We've got to reduce our tax liability. We have to make our money go farther. If you want to learn how to invest like banks do, that's what your personal bank does. I was a chairman of the board of a bank for a couple of years. I can share with you how it's done. Make your money go further. Show you how to earn interest on money even after you spend it, which is, again, how banks operate. You can love banks or hate them. It doesn't really matter. But we can agree that they're savvy about money, and we can learn from them. I can share with you how that's done. Your money will go farther. And when we're talking about inflation, that is more important than ever. You've got to make your dollars stretch farther. You've got to make them work harder for you. You have to earn interest on money even after you spend it, and your personal bank allows you to do that. I can show you how. Contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. Stay tuned in the next segment. I got some more great stuff to share, so you don't want to miss it.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ferenc. For more information, contact Ferenc at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth. Want more information? Contact Ferenc at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ferenc Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferenc, and you can contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. Yes, you will actually reach me. So here's another one, another kick in the pants, in addition to the other things I've been sharing earlier in this show. And by the way, if you did miss it, you can always go to you can go to yourpersonalbank.com, listen to any of the previously recorded shows, including this one, anytime you want. Each has its own topic, so feel free to listen to any of them, anything that interests you. I think you'll find it very, very enlightening. There's several years of shows there. But this latest kick in the pants is Biden has now canceled another $6 billion in student loans, and this is primarily for public sector workers. He's forgiven the loans for 78,000 borrowers who work in the public sector. Now, this brings his total student loan debt write-offs to over $143 billion, even though last year the U.S. Supreme Court told him he couldn't do it. If you have a president who took the oath of office, who stated he was going to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, and at the same time turns around and completely disregards a co-equal branch of government, the U.S. Supreme Court, you do not have a representative republic anymore. You do not have a constitutional republic anymore. You have one branch overriding the other, which is completely against purpose of our representative republic, the three branches of government, and the process of checks and balances. That's a bigger issue, which we'll get into further, I'm sure, at some point, but that's frustrating in and of itself. He's ignoring the U.S. Supreme Court and, in essence, daring them to do something about it. You know, it's like, what are you going to do? Frustrating part about this is these student loan debt forgiveness programs are all targeted to specific groups of people. In other words, the government, or the Biden administration, is picking and choosing winners and losers. And guess who they're primarily focused on forgiving the debts on? People that tend to vote for them, public service workers, for example, who vote overwhelmingly Democrat. In other words, this is nothing more than a bribe for votes or a payback for votes. And they're continuing to do this to continue to bribe voters to get them to vote for them. Folks, that's illegal. You can't bribe. You can't give away something for the benefit of receiving votes, but that is exactly what they're doing, the Biden administration, that is, which means they're really breaking the law, breaking two different sets of laws, ignoring a co-equal branch of government, the U.S. Supreme Court, and bribing voters with student loan payoffs. It's ugly. It's a power move. It's not representative republic. It's not democracy. It's not America. It's not American. It's ugly in every step of the way. And it's completely immoral and unfair. Because again, it goes back to, what about those people who did pay back their loans? They're suckers for doing so now. Or those that did not go to college at all and did not incur debt, yet their tax dollars, student loan payoffs are not free. Somebody pays the bill, and it falls on taxpayers. So those that chose not to go to college are now getting to pay for someone who does go to college. I said this kind of half jokingly to somebody. Well, if we're going to have to carry, each of us taxpayers are going to have to carry a student loan debt, we should at least get to write it off on our taxes. It's like having a dependent, right? It's really sick. from a financial standpoint and completely financially irresponsible. But again, it has nothing to do with finances. It has everything to do with politics. But here's what I'm going to give you that gets really scary. This is from the medical community, and I've also seen some job listings, for example, for Mayo Clinic. Now, if you don't know, there's a Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale near where I live, and Mayo Clinic is considered the gold standard of healthcare. So if you're somebody who has a medical issue, and if you can afford, you have the money, you'll probably end up at the Mayo Clinic or choose or request to be there. Well, this is where it gets really scary and where this could literally affect people on a very important level, regardless of their economic situation. So they are fostering diversity and inclusion in job listings in the medical field. They're considering each applicant individually instead of relying on test scores and grades alone. They're also preferencing certain groups of people, of course, things like skin color, those that are, let's say, they're criminals, let's just put it that way. Some of them that are blind, have autism or other health issues. And these are, for example, one job listing for Mayo Clinic here for a cardiac nurse. Cardiac nurse is heart attack type of situation. In other words, that's the type of person that might likely be the first person you get in front of in an emergency room situation if you had a heart attack. Now, do you want that person there because of their skin color or what they looked like or what group they were part of? Or how about if they were blind or had mental issues? You want that person being the one in charge of your medical care, being the first one there to determine what type of medical care you need? Folks, these are oftentimes life or death decisions that medical professionals have to make. Your life literally could be on the line. This DEI stuff, it can be kind of silly and funny even in the academic world. It can even be frustrating in the government world, employees, or even the corporate world. But when you start talking about having DEI in airline pilots, for example, we saw that recently, and now in the medical community, folks, those are jobs that involve life or death decisions, literally. Your life could literally hang on the balance of somebody that may or may not be qualified to be in that position, but they got there due to the fact of their group they're a part of or their skin color or some other criteria other than their capability. I don't know about you, but when I go under the knife for surgery, I want the best I can find. I always say there's the old 80-20 rule, and we all have heard that one where 20% get 80% of the work done. A friend of mine always shares he calls it the 2% rule. He calls them rock stars. In every field, in every endeavor, there's 2% that they're the rock stars. When you go into surgery, do you want an 80%er, a 20%er, or a rock star? The answer is obvious. The problem with this DEI stuff and inclusion and things like that is it's not merit-based. It's not choosing the best candidates. It's choosing people by skin color or what group they're a part of or other criteria that have nothing to do with the merit or the qualifications or the capability of that job. And those jobs are extremely important, particularly on a cardiac nurse, for example. Very important job, extremely important. We need to step up and stop this stuff. Are you going to wait till a loved one or yourself are going to be stuck in that situation health-wise where you have somebody that you're not too sure if they're qualified? Look, it's sad but true. If somebody's you're going into surgery or you have an emergency room situation and you see a minority, and if DEI becomes more prevalent, are you going to ask the question of whether they're qualified or not? See, in the past, it was never a question. It didn't matter what they looked like. If they were an emergency room doctor or a surgeon or something like that, we could pretty much be assured that person went through the training, the experience, they're qualified. They're very good at what they do or they wouldn't be there. But with DEI, diversity, inclusion, and all this stuff, Now the question has to get in your mind, is going to be in many people's minds, is this person really qualified or not? And are you going to put yourself in that position to undergo surgery, for example? See, it isn't funny anymore. This is literally getting to be life or death. And I know some people may think this is a little hyperbolic, but I don't believe so. I know myself at this point in time, I'm not too sure if I would want a younger doctor working on me, or surgeon or whatever, particularly one that's maybe graduated from medical school, say in the last 5 or 10 years. Because I'm not sure if they're qualified or not. And I don't care what they look like, because the stuff they're teaching them, they're spending time. If you're spending time on things like diversity, it means you're not spending time on learning about medical procedures, for example, to help you become a better doctor or surgeon or whatever your position is. That stuff's important. There's only so many hours in a day or a week or a year. They can only learn so much. So if you waste time in an area that's stupid, in my opinion, not beneficial to that job, to their skill set, that means they're going to be less qualified than they could have been. Is that the person you want working on you? I know the answer in my case. So again, this isn't funny anymore. And if you were on the fence, or you're just like, I don't know. I mean, I know I don't agree with it, but let other people get out there and fight the good fight. It might be time to step up before something happens to you or a loved one. So as I said, this stuff, we're going into some chaotic times, and it's going to create some unexpected consequences. Some of these things are going to affect our economy and our money. How do you protect yourself? Diversify, reduce your risk, reduce your taxes, increase your liquidity. Do you have access to your money without taxes, without penalties, without having to pay a fee or a fine or a penalty or tax to access the money quickly if you need it, for example, for an emergency, or you see an opportunity? Because the other thing about economic chaos, the good side, the flip side, is there's going to be opportunities. There's going to be opportunities to purchase stocks or property or other assets at bargain basement prices if we see a recession, for example. But if you rode the roller coaster down, let's say, you won't have a lot of free cash, so to speak, to take advantage and pull the trigger. And if you're sitting in cash with inflation as high as it is, higher than normal at least, you're losing value, losing opportunity cost every day that you're sitting in cash. Why not have the money at least make a decent return? Let's say make 6% tax-free. We can do that right now, and those dividends are increasing going forward. That's exciting. And with high liquidity, so you can take it, access it, use it when you want, and pull the trigger and take advantage of those opportunities when they present themselves. Stay tuned in the last segment. I got some more great stuff, something from Rand Paul that I think you're going to like. You don't want to miss it.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ferenc. For more information, contact Ferenc at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth. Want more information? Contact Ferenc at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ferenc Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferenc, and if you want to reach me, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. And yes, you will reach me. So recently I was listening to an interview from Rand Paul Sr., somebody I respect greatly. He's very much a libertarian. I really like his economic stances, for example. Of course, he's not been the most popular senator out there, but the reality is he's got some great ideas, and frankly, he's been right. But he shared something recently in an interview I shared. He said, I thought this was powerful because I get asked this all the time. What should I do? Where should I put my money and all this kind of stuff? And Rand Paul answered this so well. Rand Paul Sr., he said, the government, he's talking about, first of all, he says, you can't take things from people. You can't steal from them. And as he points out, why do we allow the government to do it? Inflation is theft. It's fraud, as he puts it. Inflation steals the ability of poor and middle class to support their family. And if you also have a situation where The government is favoring one group over another, like the student loan debt. It's stealing money literally from one group and giving it to the other. Again, why do we put up with it? Why do we allow the government to do what none of us could do? We'd be put in jail for those types of things. And he made another big point that I thought was really powerful, and this one really struck me. He said, you can have your precious metals, your guns, and your cabin, but it won't matter if you don't have your freedom. And he's so right. So many people I know, they're just fed up with all the society and what's going on and the direction, and they're becoming preppers, they're stocking up. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things. You should stock up on guns and ammo and food and water, and you should have a safe place and to be able to protect your family and all those things. I think it's very valuable. But at the same time, you should also get involved to try to stop it, because like he said, it doesn't have to be this way. We can change who's in charge of government, and we have to change who's in charge if we want to protect our freedoms. Reagan talked about this. Thomas Jefferson said that every generation has to fight for freedom. This is our fight in this generation. Are you going to look in the mirror and say, did you do what you could have done to fight for freedom, win or lose? Are you going to be able to look at your kids or grandkids in their eye and say, I stood up for freedom when it was challenged so that we could continue to preserve it, not only for myself, but for the future generations, for you also? Are you going to be able to look at yourself in the eye, or are you going to shrink away from the fight? We fought a revolution in this country against a tyranny of a monarchy. No taxation without representation. Remember all that? Well, there was a lot of people who didn't want to fight. A lot of them were they were well off, and they were enjoying their lifestyle that they were receiving, even though they didn't have the freedoms and such that maybe they could have. That's why I admire the founders so much. The Declaration, those that signed the Declaration of Independence, there's 56 signers. All of them, for the most part, were very wealthy. They pledged their wealth, they pledged their very lives to sign that declaration, because they were signing it against a dictator, a king with ultimate power. And if they got caught, they knew by the British soldiers, they would be tried and hung for treason. They knew that. They pledged their sacred honor and their fortunes and their very lives. Benjamin Franklin shared so eloquently when he said, after they signed, he said, "Oh, gentlemen, we either need to hang together or we will all literally hang separately." And he meant it literally. Where are those people? There are some today. We're starting to see more of them. Like I said, I'm getting more encouraged by the week. And if you've been on the fence kind of thinking, what can I do? Or should I do something? First of all, yes, if there's something you can do to make a difference, then it's time to step out and do it. We don't have a lot of time to save this country and save this society. If we allow this government that we have and the administration we have to continue for much longer, we're not going to recognize the country that we live in. It's going to happen slowly, and then it'll happen quickly. I've shared this, my own father's experience growing up in Hungary, the Soviets taking over. It happened over about a 5-year period in their example. They promised the world, and when they got about a third of the political power, the communists that is, they just brought in the military and took over. Now, I'm not saying exactly going to happen the same way here. They are attempting to take over. I'll give you a quick example. We always hear the current administration, the Democrats, always sharing they want to fundamentally transform America. Well, let me share something with you. When you want to fundamentally transform something, it's because you don't like it. You want to change it. You certainly don't love it. Try this on for size. Tell your wife or girlfriend, for example, you want to fundamentally change her. See what kind of reaction you're going to get from that. Probably not a good one. See, conservatives are always, attacked and vilified. But what does a conservative mean? It means there's something you want to conserve, something you want to protect, something you want to flourish. That's what a conservative is. So if you do love this country, if you do love our Constitution, if you love this country and the people and the society and the way of life that we've had, why would you crap in it? Why would you go to the bathroom in your own bed? Like I said, even animals don't do that. That's the part I don't understand, where so many of these elites and wealthy or whatever, where they're just allowing things to go downhill, or they're doing things because it's benefiting them. Let's take these big businesses, and they're going to get cheap labor, or they hope to get cheap labor from all this illegal immigration. But look at all the crap that comes with it. The crime, the dirtiness in the streets, literally our society turning into a third world country. In many parts of our country and our cities, it's already happened. Do you want to live in that? Yeah, you might be in your gated community and protected and all that stuff, but you still come face to face with it from time to time. And if you allow this stuff to keep continuing, as I stated earlier, this diversity and equity inclusion getting into the healthcare industry and even into places like Mayo Clinic, the best of the best. Do you want your surgeon get his position or her position because of what group they were part of, or do you want them to be a surgeon because they're the best at what they do? They're qualified. This stuff is happening everywhere. So if you haven't gotten into the fight, it's time. It's time to get into it and be a patriot. Stand up for your country. Fight for the freedom and do whatever influence you have, whether it's time or money or whatever it may be. Education, this is the other thing Rand Paul shared. He said, doesn't have to be this way. He said, education is the key. Understand what's really going on. And that's really been the focus of this show, my show here, for the last couple of years or more. A lot of people ask me, why do you talk about current events and all that stuff so much when it's a financial focus show? I do have a financial slant to it. I do like to share how much of these current policies and what's going on affect us economically, certainly. So it's kind of unique that way. But I understand, like Rand Paul said, I'll take it further. You can have your precious metals, your guns, your cabin. You can have your portfolio, your 401k, your IRA. You can have all the money in the bank. But if you don't have your freedom, it doesn't matter. What's the point? Again, it doesn't have to be this way. Influence those around you that you can. Take the opportunity to make the difference. We can change the people. It's not our government that's the problem. It's the people we have in government right now that are not operating it constitutionally. Now, another question was asked, and I thought this was very powerful, so we'll finish on this thought. Because what do you do in the meantime? Yes, get involved, fight for freedom, do whatever you can. But also, this liquidation of debt, as he predicted, they asked, what do you think is going to happen? Well, he thinks the government's, the liquidation of debt's going to happen. We're adding $1 trillion of debt every 100 days at this point, and that's accelerating. That is unsustainable. We cannot continue this way. I don't know if it's a year or 5 or 10. Who knows? I tend to think it's going to be shorter end of that, but we'll see. For an individual or a business, that would mean bankruptcy, and you liquidate the debt through a bankruptcy. Well, the government isn't going to do that. They're not going to have that opportunity. But they can inflate their way out of the debt, which means we're going to have higher inflation for a longer period of time. Why would they do that? Well, if through inflation, the debt of the old dollars will be worth less than the debt will be worth less over time, is in essence what happens. In real dollars, the government, in essence, will owe less. They can inflate their way out of the debt, which is exactly what's happening as we speak, which means it's very likely we're going to see higher inflation, higher interest rates for far longer. A Vanguard article came out recently said the same thing. They're predicting bond prices, bond returns to increase for the next 5 to 10 years because of all the excess government spending. I don't see them slowing down their spending anytime soon. And I don't think there's the political will to do it anyway. Now, there's an opportunity in all this. The government's financial irresponsibility creates an opportunity. It's going to push bond returns higher, which means dividends with insurance companies are going to be higher. It's predicted over the next 5 to 10 years are going to continue to increase. And you can set it up tax-free and have high liquidity so you can take advantage of opportunities. Your personal bank will do all of that. I can share with you how that's done. And again, I can also share with you using the bank lines of credit, like we did when I was chairman of the board of a bank. This is how banks operate. I can share with you how banks make money. Look, like them, hate them, like I said earlier, doesn't matter. You can learn how they operate. You can learn from them. They're savvy about money. You can earn interest on money you spent. If you're earning more in dividends, then you're getting charged in interest when you access the money to, say, supplement retirement, pay down debt, purchase items, or invest in things, you can keep the difference. The historical average is about 2%. 2% per year may not sound like a lot, but add 2% return to your portfolio each and every year, and that's a huge difference. Again, for example, if you had a 7% return annually on average, and you now add 2% to that, that becomes a 9% average annual return on your portfolio. Your personal bank can do that. That's the type of things it can do. Increase your liquidity, make your money go farther, stretch your dollar. It's really important during higher inflation times. It can do those things for you. Contact me at yourpersonalbank.com for more information. Stay tuned to next week's show. We're going to have some great information as we do always. And as long as it's on our money, in God we trust.
Listen Tuesdays at noon and Saturdays at 1 to the Your Personal Bank Show for more information. Contact Ferenc at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guests of this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Some products discussed may have limitations and not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Dividend rates and bank line of credit rates may change. For current rates, contact Ferenc at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. Again, that's 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com.